All right, welcome back. This is step 3, assembling our Shovelhead motor. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through and completely show you how to true up some flywheels and get them ready to throw some cases around it. Now, before I get started, the last couple of videos I've done, a lot of people in the comments have asked how they can support me. Now, I've completely sold out of all my shirts. Thank you to everyone that's bought one. Basically, what you can do to support me is, if you haven't already, chuck a comment down below. I reply to everyone's comments, give the video a like, and if you haven't already, give me a subscribe. All that stuff helps my video get traction and in the end helps me get paid. So please, if you haven't already, go ahead and do that. Also, I have a little marker up here. You can click that and follow me over on my Instagram. I post way more over there. You can see what I get up to day to day and see what videos are coming up next. In the last video, you saw that I completely balanced all these flywheels, so we are ready to bolt this bottom end together. So I'm gonna bolt all our bottom end together with our rod set, all our pinion shafts, all that stuff, and we are gonna true it up in this here truing stand. So basically everything you see on this table is what we're gonna need to do this video. So we're gonna go through, use our truing stand. We've got some, clamp our flywheels together, big torque wrench, because this is the silly style with the massive nut on the sprocket side because they stopped using a key. So this is like 300 and something foot-pounds. So we need a really big breaker bar for that. And basically, we just need our trusty little dial gauge here to dial it up and make sure this thing's running perfectly true. So that's enough of that shit. Let's get into this. All right, so before we get too carried away and dive straight into trying to tighten this thing up and work it all out, you want to get all your ducks in a row. So go through your little manual that you've got. You should have a manual for whatever bike you're trying to rebuild or you are rebuilding, whatever bikes you've got that you work on. You want to have a manual for them. You just can't remember all this crap. You don't have to be a tough guy and know it all off the top of your head. It's easy just to come back and double check this stuff. So in the back, I've just got a climber manual here. I'm not fucking rich enough to own a Harley manual yet, but I am looking for some. If you guys have a Harley manual that you want to sell to me, hit me up. I've got a little email address. You want to get into the back of your book usually has all your torque specs in it. So in the back of this, I have found the torque specs. Now, you want to work out what year your stuff is to start with. So it all changes. Like if you have a look, this book does 66 to 84. So that's generator shovel through to Evo stuff, right? So you really want to make sure you have the right year's flywheels. You know what you're looking for, because you can really fuck this up by using the wrong torque specs from the wrong year. Example of that. If we go to 66 to 69 torque specs here, they say the flywheel assembly. So your sprocket nut is 100 foot-pound, right? Now, these are 78, right? So if I go to 78, it says here, flywheel assembly, the sprocket nut is 400 foot-pounds. So that's 4 times what it should be. You would just peel the threads straight off that sprocket shaft and then you're up for a few $100 replacing it. So you need to be certain that you have the right year stuff, you know what year it is, and you're using the right torque specs. So the next thing, sometimes they give you a range. Like if we go down here to late 78 to 84, so the very last shovel stuff, it's got sprocket nut 300 to 400 foot-pounds. So why does it give you a 100-pound variant? I don't get it either. So I always try and shoot for like the lower side, because 300 foot-pounds is a fucking lot. That is heaps. You got to think about your early stuff. They only put 100 foot-pound on this, and they're talking about putting 3 or 4 times more than that. Obviously the nut is a little bit bigger, and the reason why there's so much torque on these later ones is because they got lazy. They got rid of the key. So the key obviously is more expensive to make. So they made the cheaper option, which is a larger taper, which holds more weight, and a larger nut, which holds more weight as well, more torque. So that's why they changed so much. They were forever trying to make these things cheaper and easier to produce, easier to manufacture. So this stuff always changes. So just so we don't get confused, I like to go through the book to start with and then write down our torques that we want to aim for on the bench here. So I'm not, diving back into this book trying to work out where I was. I'm just going to write them down so I know what they are. So let's go. So I think this, judging by my castings on this flywheel, you guys can just go online and there's a lot of websites and forums that'll tell you what casting numbers are what. I've already looked it up. These are about a 78. So I'm going to go with 78 stuff, which seems to be the higher torques. So this reckons for the sprocket, so this big guy, 400 foot-pounds, which I'm not doing. That is fucking heaps. It does not need that. But anyway, let's go through. So flywheel assembly, sprocket nut. So 70 to 71 is 170 foot-pound, but then 72 to 78 is 400. So there's a huge variant. You've got to make sure you know what you've got. So I'm just going to write on my bench here, sprocket, and I'm going to go 300 foot-pound. Like, I can go a bit more, so I'll see what that feels like, and then we'll go from there. So then our pinion is 175, and then where's our freaking crank pin? Crank pin is 175 as well, apparently. So it says pinion's 170, crank pin 175. Sounds about right. So that is all our torque specs sorted out. I'm going to keep this book around just in case there's something else we want to look at. But that is basically where we're going to start. So the other tool that we're going to need to do this, I'm not sure if it's in frame, but it's here on my vise. So come over and I'll show you what we're going to do with this. So this little guy is sort of the star of the show. Now, if you don't have a special one like this that I borrowed off my good buddy Ollie Oliver, you can just make one too. So you see these studs here? These studs are there because your flywheel has holes in it. The idea of that is the studs go through your holes, and then when you tighten this thing up, you've got something to tighten against. You got this guy in the vise nice and tight. Those pins are going to hold it, and then we can really swing off this thing when we tighten it up. So this is a must. You can make this out of like a bit of box section with a couple of bolts welded in it. Just got to make sure you've got a little cutout here, because your pin will go, when you've got this turned over the other way, your pin will come out this little hole here. So basically where we want to start to put this thing together, we want to put in both sides of our flywheels, we want to put our pinion shafts and our sprocket shafts in. So let's go through and do that. Righto, so let's just start with our pinion shaft here. Now, a few things we want to do. We want to make sure our key is in there, it's in good condition, it's not bashed up or nothing like that. Just make sure it's lined up with the taper, otherwise it won't want to go in properly. So I've seen a lot of people put Loctite and stuff on these. I don't get it. The idea of these nuts is that it locks it on there. I never put Loctite on it because when you get to doing your crank pin, you've got to sort of sneak up on it, right? So you've got to put a little bit of torque on it, then a little bit more torque on it, and keep playing around with it. If you were to put Loctite in that, the Loctite would go off before you're at your maximum torque, because you've got to play around with it, and then your torque on your taper is not going to be correct. So I just like to use a little bit of oil on the threads, and that's how I put them together. The other thing you want to look at when you're putting this thing together is that your oil hole lines up. So different years, these oil holes move, right? So the oil hole for your crank pin moves as well. That's why you've got different years and stuff on your rod end assemblies, because this oil hole moves, and also for your pinion shaft. So just make sure when you put it in, your oil hole lines up. The other thing, I've got my tapers nice and clean and dry. You don't want to put a wet taper together. Make sure they're nice, clean and dry. So that goes in there, obviously, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on the threads like we spoke about. And then we're going to go back over to our little tightening device, and we're going to tighten this guy up. Now, another thing I want to talk about is this has provision for screws and clips, right? So the idea of the screws and clips is so this nut can't come undone. But if you have a look at later model stuff, they've done away with all the clips and stuff like that because they worked out they don't really need them. So I'm not going to worry about clips for my sprocket and my pinion shaft, but I have some clips laying around for my crank pin, so I'm just going to put them in if they line up. If you don't have them, I wouldn't be too worried about them. But let's go back over to the vise and do this guy up now. Alright, so like I said, what we're going to do is put a little bit of oil on the threads here, The other reason you put oil on, I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with like torquing down like a head gasket or something on a car. The oil helps the thread lubricate and it actually puts more pressure on the bolts because the torque is not going through the threads locking up because they're dry. So putting the oil on there actually helps for a lot of reasons. So I've got the nut done up with a bit of oil on it here. Got my socket here, and I'm just going to use my small torque wrench because I don't have to use this massive thing when I'm only doing, what did he say, 170 foot-pounds. So when we torque these things up, we don't want to go straight to 170 foot-pounds. We want to sort of, sneak up on it a little bit and slowly go up in sections. So I'm going to start with 50 foot-pounds and then sort of go 50, 100, 150, and then our 170. So I don't know if you guys have ever used one of these. You just sort of wait for the click. So we're just going to do this up, and you want to do it not in a jerking motion. You want to do this a nice linear slow pull. So there's 50. Like I said, make our way up. Might go 75 next. 50 is probably 50 to 100 is probably a bit big of a jump. Someone's going to yell at me in the comments. There you go, a bit more. Like I said, we'll go 100-ish now. There we go. Now I'm going to go to my 170 foot-pounds. When you get high up here, it gets a bit tight. So this is my 170 foot-pounds. Now, let's give this thing a go, see what it does. There it is. So one thing I like to do, after I've gotten to my torque, let me go get my copper hammer. And with my copper hammer, I like to give the shaft a knock in the direction that the taper is. So I'll give it a knock like this. Now the reason for that is a taper, when it's shocked, when you shock a taper, it will get tighter. So the idea of it is I've gone through, put my torque on it, and then shocked the taper. And then when I come through this, it will be looser again. So I go back up to my 170. See, it moved a little bit. So I'm just going to shock it again and do the same thing. So that is going to ensure that our taper is properly seated and our nuts to torque. See, just like that. Now, if we didn't do that and this thing copped a shock like it will with every single fire, this nut could get loose because our taper might be slowly seating and then there's less pressure on this nut. So doesn't hurt to double check this stuff. There it is. That is our pinion shaft in our flywheels, just like that. Right, the other thing I like to do after I've torqued something up, I like to just put a little paint pen mark through the nut and onto the shaft. So that tells me two things. That'll tell me that I've already torqued it up, so I haven't forgotten to torque something up. And secondly, if we were to pull this apart again in 10 years' time, it'll tell us if it's moved or anything weird like that. So always put a little mark on it just to make sure that you've torqued stuff. So the other thing I wanted to mention is when you put this shit together, you've got to make sure your threads are super, super clean. If you've just pulled this thing apart, you're putting it straight back together and you haven't cleaned this yet, you need to just go through. Easy way to do it is just with a little wire wheel on your buff, just go through and wire wheel the threads on the inside and outside. And that'll get all the shit out of the bottoms of the threads, and then they will go together really nicely like that. So the other thing is you got to make sure these flywheels are really, really clean. You've gone through, you've given these a good bath, you've cleaned them up completely before we put it together. So another thing that is good to check is, as I was talking about these passages here, you want them all to line up. A good thing to check, now that we have this pinion shaft in, we get some compressed air and stick it up our shaft and make sure our oil hole is lining up. So let's do that really quickly. So I just got a little bit of compressed air here. We're just going to put it up the guts of it, and then the little hole comes out here. Yep, so I've got oil, I've got air coming out there. So that is perfect. So this guy is good to go. So we'll put that to the side for now, and then let's put our sprocket shaft in. So this is the guy that has heaps and heaps of pressure on it. Like I said, I'm going to go to 300, see what it likes. It says between 300 and 400. So let's just see what we end up doing there. So stab it in there, a little bit of oil on there, like I said. Oh, oil on there. Do this up by hand, and then we will put it in our little vise guy and swing off this bitch. Make sure you've got all the sockets before you start trying to do this too. Nothing worse than getting halfway through a job and realizing you don't have the fucking sockets to do it. So this big guy, if you guys are wondering at home, is 1 5/8 inches. Righto, so what did we say? Sprocket shaft, 300 foot-pounds. So same thing, we want to sneak up on it. We don't want to just start at 300. So I'll start with 100. With these style ones, you've got to click this, all right? Click that in, and then as soon as this little pin touches, it clicks it out, and that's your noise. So put this big guy together like this. Like we said, we are starting with 100 foot-pounds. So make sure that's clicked. I'm sure this is going to take quite a few. There it is, that's 100. So let's go maybe 200, and then we'll go 250, 300. We'll see what that feels like. If it feels like we're going all right, we might go to 350. Really depends. It's only a small nut. It's not a fucking crazy big nut. Make sure you always reset this if you've got one of these distortion style ones. On it, there's 200. Let's go 250. Freaking tight, eh? It's crazy how tight this is. Like I said, it's just because they got lazy and didn't want to put a key in there anymore. It's cheaper not to. There it is, 250. Let's go 300 now. See what it likes. See if it likes it. Oh, fuck me. See, that is fucking tight. My fucking socket slipped off. So that's not ideal. I might have to give this socket a machine just because this nut sort of goes into a recess and you're only pulling off the top of the nut. So, and if you have a look at the socket, the socket sort of doesn't start engaging for a bit either. So what I might do, I might give this, just machine this flat so that it's engaging straight away. So it don't slip off it like that again. Right, that is going to get us much better engagement of our socket. Alrighty, let's try this again. That seems like much better engagement there. So let's try at 300 again, shall we? There it is, that's at 300. So same thing, I want to give this a good knock with my hammer. And then we'll check it again. So another 300. I reckon 300 is more than enough. This thing is fucking tight. Oh yeah, see, it went a little bit more. So it's always good to give that a little knock. Do it again. Make sure if you're worried about hitting your threads, you put your nut on so you don't, but I'm not worried. Alright. Let's go again. A little bit more. I'm just going to keep doing that until it stops moving. All right, that is it. Like I said, I think 300 is more than enough. Absolutely swinging off this thing. It ain't moving. So, same as our pinion, I'm gonna go through and put a nice little white pen mark on this. So I remember that we have torqued it up. Nice. That is our pinion side and our sprocket side shafts both torqued up and put in now. Now the next thing to do, we need to take our rod set apart. So we're going to tighten up the pinion side of our rod set first because that has the key in it. So there's the key. So that's the one with the key. We do that one first, and that's because this other side does not have a key, and that's the side we move around to make this thing run perfectly true. So we just lock up the key side to torque, and then we slowly sneak up on the other side, and that's the side we move and manipulate to get our flywheels running true. So we don't need to pull this apart, take all our bearings out. I'm going to put a bit of oil in these when we put it together. If you're not expecting to run this engine for a while, you can put it together with grease or a Vaseline, and then that'll hold in there for a bit longer. Oil will tend to drip out after a few months, but if you're going to start this up real quick like we are, I'm just going to use oil to put it together. So like I said, we want to go through and do the pinion side first. So this is our pinion side, and the reason for that is, like I said, this is keyed. So the key goes in here into our flywheels, and then it also lines up with an oil hole. Like I said, if you've got the wrong crank pin, the oil hole's not going to line up. So make sure you check your crank pin before you do all your balancing and everything, and make sure this lines up. I've already made sure mine lines up, so that is all sweet. So I'm just going to go through, give this, dry out my shafts here. Dry it, like I said, we want a dry taper. Dry tapers are much stronger than wet tapers. So, not sure if you guys have done any machine work, but if you put your, for instance, your drill chuck into your Morse taper in your tailstock on your lathe, and if it's wet or if it's got oil on it, it'll come loose straight away. They need to be dry. They lock much tighter when they're dry. So we're going to put that in there. Here, that's all in. Get our nut with a little bit of oil. Just like that. Put our nut on. Nice. So let's transfer this back to our little vise here. Right, so same thing as the rest. We're just going to sneak up on this. So it said 175 for crank pin. So pretty sure I have the Yep, I've got the guy there. So just so I don't have to lug that big one around, I'm just going to go with my small one up to sort of 100 and something, and then I might just swap to my big one. So like I said, we want to sneak up on this. Let's go 50 or something to start with. I might do this around the other way. It might be easier for me. Oh, I can't. Freaking prick. Don't worry about it. Alright, so we're starting with 50. There it is. 75-ish. There we go. Now, I might just jump to the bigger guy now. Just so I have to lug such a heavy fucking thing around. Fuck, it's a big torque wrench. Oh no. 175, let's go 100 just to start. Let's see how close my other guy was. Oh, fuck, this thing is heavy. I might be a bit off camera here for you, but you'll see it turn nonetheless. Oh, that's 100. What's that? 10, 20, 30, 20s. 20, so we got 150. Oh no, this is 150. There it is. And what did we say? We want 175. So 50, 60, 70. 180 is pretty close. That's it. Just going to give this a knock, the same as the rest with my hammer. I'm going to put the nut on, like I said. If you're worried about your thread, put your nut on like that, and then you're not going to damage it when you knock it. Oh, yep, that went in a fair bit. Let's leave that on. Go again. There it is again. Another knock. Again. A little bit. One more for good luck. Yep, and that'll frickin' do. So now I'm just gonna see if my little clips here will line up. So that one doesn't line up and neither does that one. So which way do I need to go? I only want to go tighter. So looser will line up, which I don't want to do. What about the other clip? No, so loose is the only one that wants to line up. So I might just go a little bit more, just so this bitch lines up. If that doesn't line up, I'd rather not swing off it. Nah, it's got ages to go. So I'm just gonna leave that. I'm not worried about it. So just like the rest, like I said, later model engines and stuff don't have any of these clips or screws or nothing in it. So as long as you're good with your torques, you're not gonna need it. So let's put a little line on this. And then same thing, we want to blow air up it and make sure the air is coming out our crank pin. So that's probably a bit excessive. We want this looking pretty professional. So same thing, let's blow our air up it and make sure the air comes out our crank pin. Sure does. Sweet. So all that is pretty well sorted. So what we're going to do next, take this nut off that we were using. We're going to put this around in here like that. And then we're going to get our rods and everything ready to put on here and then put our other flywheel on top and start the process of truing this. So now we have the pinion side of our crank pin all locked in there. We want to go ahead and start putting our rods on there. Now, if you have loose style rollers like I don't, if you've just need to put the racers on and feed the bearings and all that sort of stuff on, sometimes a bit of grease or Vaseline helps you feed them in there because, you know, it helps stick them there and they stay in spot and all that. But mine's sort of cheating. I've got caged rollers, so I can just chuck mine in like that. If you have the other style, like I said, stick them in with a bit of grease or whatever. I'm planning to start this engine up pretty well soon after I build it. So I'm just going to put this together with some really heavy oil. So I know it's going to hang around until I go to start this thing up. So the only thing you really got to be really careful about is the direction you put your rods. So this is your rod set, right? You want to make sure you don't put them the wrong way around. The biggest thing to remember is your fork. So your big rod is on the back side. So that's always on the back. There's like a year, I forget which year it is, but there is a year that Harley turned this around. Forget what that was for. I'm pretty sure Indians are the other way around too. If you guys know, chuck it in the comments. But just remember that the big rod is always to the back side. If you mess that up, it's not going to be good. So oil everything up. Goes in super nice like that. Sometimes I like to pour a little bit of oil in there. That'll go down through all the bearings. And I will clean off this oil on our taper when I put this other flywheel on. But we'll just give this a bit of a turn, get all that oil down into the bearings. Turns super, super nice. So I'm just going to clean this off here. Like I said, preferably we want our tapers nice and dry. So like that, put our sprocket side on, just like that. I'll put a bit of oil on my nut here. Just like I said, we want to oil all our threads up so that we get the best seal and the best torque on our shaft. And now the other thing we use here, we use this guy. So the idea of this, I've seen a lot of people do this in a press as well. The idea of this is that it's lining up the flywheels sort of before we start. So these two, because it's a C, it's going around the radius of our flywheels and sort of lining them up for us. So you see how that's sort of moving around and lining them up for us? So that just helps us get started, right? The other thing we want to watch is our up and down. So there is a measurement for how much the rod set should move up and down, but because we're going to be locking this down onto a taper, that's going to be getting smaller. We can only really measure that after these two pins have been torqued down. So while you're torquing this, you need to keep watching to make sure this is still loose. If this tightens up, you're in big trouble, and you got to take it apart again, and you got to take some material off your fork. So that's both sides of your fork, so that it doesn't crush down onto your rods. At the moment, I've got heaps of space, but that will change. So because, like I said, because we are going to be truing this thing, we're going to have to move these flywheels just a little bit so that we true up both sides of our pinion and sprocket shaft where the bearings sit. So what we want to do, we just want to put a little bit of torque on this so that we can still move it nice and easy. So I reckon I might come through and put, like I said, we'll start small, 50, and I might go to like 75 or something, and then get it close, and then slowly sneak up on it like we have been doing the whole time. If you do it too tight, you're just going to be flogging the piss out of this trying to move it. All right, so that's 50. Let's go 75, and we will call it good. Right there. We'll call that good, and we'll take this apart and finally put it in our truing stand and start truing this up. All right. So we take this off. We will put this back on every single time that we torque this. So keep it around. Right, this is the part where you really earn your pennies, because these things get super heavy after doing this 100 fucking times. Oh. Righto, so basically what's going on here, this guy is just got centers that are exactly opposite each other and perfectly true. So both my pinion and my sprocket shaft have a center drilled in them so that they run perfectly true when I spin them. So you just got to watch, neither of these are on bearings because we want them to be perfectly true. So we just have a look how much weight we put on this and make sure we don't put too much weight on it. We just want it to spin nice and easy. If we put too much weight on this guy, we will actually bend the flywheels in and we will get a false reading on our dial gauge. So the way we check this is true. We get our humble little dial gauge here, and I haven't really worked out where to put this yet. So, alright, so I have my dial gauge set up here. I've just got it set up because I've got a steel bench. I can just sit it on the ground. Usually these things have some cool, not usually, sometimes these things have some cool guys that just sort of slide in. You can do both sides at the same time. Pretty sweet, but not in this instance. So first looks at this thing, it is a little bit out. So we want to sort of work on our sprocket side. So just before I start, there's probably a million ways to do this. Everyone's got their own little tricks and knacks. So if I don't do it the same way you did, doesn't fucking matter. Get over it. You do it your way. I do it my way. So the way I do it, because our pinion side is locked together, right? We've got a key here and a key here. We are looking to turn this guy like this, and that's how we dial up our shafts. So I like to work on the free floating side. So this is our sprocket side. So if you come over here, you can have a look what I've got going on. But for argument's sake, let's have a look at our pinion side and see what that's doing. Oh, good. You can do this both ways. Our pinion side is much closer than our sprocket side. So come over here and we'll have a look at the sprocket side together. Oh, don't do that, you prick. Alright, so if you watch our dial gauge, in a perfect world, when we are finished, this thing will not move at all. If it might move a tiny bit, but fuck all. So if we have a look at it now, she moves quite a bit. So what is that? This is a millimeter one. By the way, I will try and convert it to imperial as much as possible. But so that is point. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1 revolution is 1 mil. So at the moment it's moving just under 4 thou. So 3 and a bit thou. So that is obviously a bit excessive. We want to knock that down to maybe moving one of these little increments we've got. So basically, how do we fix that? Now, we've got to go around and work out where it's off. So when these things are off, your pins are like a little bit out, and that's why they are doing what they're doing. So I like to put the dial gauge on a horizontal plane so that I know I'm working with this direction here. So we have a look at the pin. So it's beside the pin that it's out. So here and here. So we know that it has to move. Now, with our dial gauge, we know that clockwise is out, anti-clockwise is in. So which way does this thing need to go? So it's going... So basically there's 2 ways that this thing can be out. Because we've got this pin here, the flywheels can be like this, or they can also be like this. So if sometimes you have to put a wedge in here and pull them apart, and sometimes you've got to put a clamp on here and pull them together. Other times when you're lucky, you've just got to rotate this guy a little bit and you're there. So you just need to work out which direction it's going. So it says that if we just look at this opposite the pin, so pin's straight down, we're going to look at it in this plane. So it says it's 0 there, and then we put the pin to the top. And it says that it's like 5 there. So that's going in, clockwise is out. So now it's coming out. So it means we need to hit it back that way. So, fuck off, mate. I'm trying to do that. I just need to get this together. So I'm going to put an X here, and that's where we're going to knock it back that way, and hopefully that fixes it. So something we're going to do 1,000 times is pull this in and out. This is like the balancing all over again. So basically what I'm going to do here, I put an X where we want to hit it, right? So here's our X, and I'm going to hit it with our copper hammer again, just lightly back that direction. So when we had it going bigger, this will knock it back and hopefully make it go smaller. So we don't know how hard to hit it yet. So it's easier just to hit it a little bit than to hit it heaps. So put it back in and see if that moved. All right, I have this set back up here now, but you can see it's sort of moved. So I'm sort of looking at where the dial stops each time. So it's going to stop somewhere and then come back somewhere. So I'm looking at where on the flywheels it's stopping. So you see it's stopping on the crank pin and then stopping opposite the crank pin, on the crank pin, opposite the crank pin. So it means we have to bend this in one of these directions. Now, easy way to think about this is like this bit of rod, right? So we're trying to work out which way we need to go with this. So if I put a tiny little bend in the middle of it, this is just a bit exaggerated. When we spin it, this is basically what's happening with the flywheel. So we know that we are getting it bigger and smaller. Bigger, smaller when we spin it. So let's see if we can translate that onto here. This has been the easiest way for me to think about it. So we're getting bigger here. So this is bigger like that. So we're on the bigger side, and then on the back side, smaller. So it's doing this. So if that was like that, that means we need to spread this because we're getting bigger here. This needs to be spread a bit so that it pulls our shafts back in. So I need to put a wedge in there and give it a knock. So once again, we pull this bitch out. All right, so I am straight opposite the crank pin, right? So we need this to go out a little bit. So there's two ways you can do that. Some people drive a wedge in here. The other way you can do it is with a couple of pry bars. So you just put this in there like this, and then you just give it a bit of a pry apart. You don't want to go too much. It's harder to go back than to go forward. So give that a bit of a knock, and let's put this back in the truing stand and see if it's done anything. All right, so let's see if this thing has moved at all now. So what did we have before? We had 0.1. So it was moving 10 increments. Now it's only moving 4 or 5. So we are going in the right direction. But you got to watch. Sometimes when you fix one thing, it'll pop up in another place. So let's just have a look where it starts and stops again. So stops. So it looks like it's gone to the sides now. So looks like we need to spin these a little bit. So where does it look like? So big, small, big, small. So right about here where I have this X already, I need to give it a knock with the copper hammer and hopefully pull this around a bit. We just need to get it a little bit closer than that, and then we can lock it down a bit more. So now, pull this out again. So with our copper hammer, where's our little mark? It's always handy to put a mark on it so you remember. Just gonna give it a little knock. Now let's put it back in and give it a try. Alrighty, so I got this back in here. You can see we are pretty close now. So I've gone from like 10 increments down to 4 here. So you see how little that fucking moves now? So what I'm gonna do now that we're a bit closer, I'm gonna put this back in our tightening station and tighten up our nut a little bit more so that when I knock it, it only moves it little bits at a time. So the looser this is, the more it'll move when you knock it. So I'm going to tighten it up a bit so it doesn't move as much when we knock it. Oh, doesn't feel that heavy until you've got to pick it up and put it down 46 times. So remember, we want to put this guy back on whenever we tighten it up. The other thing I should say, if you are doing this and you make too much of an adjustment and it goes really far off, you can come back to this stage and undo this and then start again. You don't have to just sort of fix it up. You can start again by just coming back, breaking this taper loose, and then doing this again. So let's go, what are we at? Let's go to like 100 foot-pound, I reckon. 100 foot-pound. We were at 50-ish, 70 or something. So let's go 100. Where is it? Righto, that's that. So let's take this back over to the truing stand, and hopefully this hasn't moved. We'll check it hasn't moved before we do any more adjustments. Every time we tighten up, we make sure this isn't getting tight. All right, so I got him back in the little truing stand here. Oh shit, that's going pretty good there. You see, I'm only moving 2 increments now. Sometimes when you tighten this stuff up, it just likes to find home and, you know, goes really close like that. So, fuck, it's fucking close. It's within probably 1. 1 and a bit. So that's pretty good. Let's have a look at the freaking other side here. See what we're working with here. Now, I really haven't found a good way to set up my fucking dial indicators yet. This is not the usual stand that I use. I usually just go to my buddy's place, John's, and use his stand. So I'm sort of trying to work this stand out a bit and work out the easiest way to do this. So if you have a look, I'm not sure if you can see, you can't. Anyway, this is moving about 3 increments now. So it's pretty close. So that's within 3 now. So I think I might just, where is it? I'm going to mark on both sides the high spot. So remember, if we go clockwise, it's bigger. So bigger is down here now. Smaller, bigger. What about this side? So I'm just trying to work out the big sides on both, because maybe I have to put the clamp on it again or pull it apart a bit. So you're always trying to work out where you need to move the thing. And if you've got a dial gauge on both sides, it's much easier and quicker. So clockwise is bigger. And this doesn't move much, so it's sort of hard to see which way it needs to go. I'm going to put this one. This one's here. Smaller, bigger. So I think I need to give that a knock right there. Let's take this off. Take this out. Quick knock. Where's my mark? Just there. Quick little knock there. Oh, that's the fucking wrong way around. Oh, these fucking... Every time you pick these flywheels up, I swear they get heavier. Alright, let's have a look. This is really easy when you've got the truing stand that just has like the fold out and fold in dials. That makes life so easy. You're not fucking around so much with dial indicators. What I got there? 1, 2, I got 4 increments there. So that's closer. What about over here? Move this fucking dial indicator again. They are so fucking painful, these things. You'd think by now they would make a more user-friendly one, but they just haven't. They are so annoying to use. Alright, so that's within 3. So they're both within 3. I'm going to go ahead and give this another tighten, because I'm scared of moving this too much. Alright, so I think I'll just max out my little torque wrench here, go 150-ish, and then once we get it right here, we should pretty well just put the final torque on it and it should be right. I almost forgot my little thing here. Probably would have not been good. There we go. So back to the truing stand and let's see what it's done. This is the high spot. That sounds sweet. You get it. So, both high spots here again. Which means we need to put a wedge in this side. So instead of doing it with my trusty little levers here, I'm going to do it the other way. I've just got a cold chisel here. I'm just going to bang it in there and get a nice spread. Just like that, spread it apart. Let's see what that is. Oh, I think I fucking gotta come over here and have a look. Righto, so I got the shits with this and I ended up busting out 2 dial gauges. So this way is a bit easier. You can see what's happening. I can just fucking put these out of the way every time that I want to do this. So our sprocket side is absolutely bang on. So I'll just say one of these increments, right? So we're looking at this. One of these tiny increments here is 0.01 of a millimeter. So that's less than half a thousandth. So this pinion side is absolutely spot on. Barely fucking moves. So we have a look at our sprocket side. So our sprocket side is sort of moving 2 increments, right? So that is 0.0008. So that is just under a thousandth. So that is pretty freaking good. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to put this back in our little guy here and tighten it up to the last bit. So I'm going to tighten it up to wherever the fuck it was. Is it back here? I don't even remember. I'm going to tighten it up to 175 foot-pound and then come back. We're going to check that it's right and then we're going to be good. This is fucking close enough. Like, you got to remember this is under a thousandth on this side and absolutely nothing on this side. So this will be good enough. So we don't have to fuck around and get this thing absolutely perfect. You probably start this thing up, rev the hell out of it, and it will change anyway. So let's go with that. Let's tighten it up. Fingers crossed it stays the same when we put it back in here. Alright, so get the big dog out. I'm going to 180, same as the other side. So fingers crossed this doesn't move it swinging off this bitch like this. There it is. So I'm just going to chuck that back in. That's moved. We'll throw this back in, fingers crossed it hasn't moved, and then I'm going to do the same thing, give this a knock with the copper hammer to make sure that taper is properly seated. So remember, every time we tighten this thing up, still got some lash in there, so that's good. Fucking fingers crossed. Much easier with 2 dial gauges, guys. Do yourself a favour. So there you go. So you see this one is moving just under 2. So this would be sort of around just under 1 thou here, and this one's barely moving. So that one is pretty well spot on. This guy would be just under 1 thou. So this is good enough. Remember, we've got, half 1 thou in each of these bearings. So this is all going to be close enough. Like I said, when you start these things up, they'll probably bash themselves to further out of true than this anyway. So this is more than enough. We don't have to go crazy on this thing. So I'm just going to give this a good knock with the hammer on the thread. Make sure this taper is locked up. Put it back in our little doodad here. We'll do the last tighten up, and then we'll check it one last time, and then we will call this thing balanced. Now this thing fucking moved before, so I'm going to make sure I put this back in the right spot. On it. Last little tighten here. It's pretty well on the money anyway. So, like I said, let's put this back in the truing stand for the last time, check it, and then tick this process off. Now there is a tolerance for how much these slap up and down. It doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it too much. As long as they're not tight in there, you're all good. Alright guys, that is our flywheels completely balanced, trued up, ready to go in our cases. So as you can see, I have all the shit here to basically assemble the bottom end now. So I'm going to go through everything like oil pump, all my lifters, chest, cam, all of that stuff. I want to put the whole bottom end together in the next episode, and then the episode after that will just be top end stuff. Should be pretty quick. So thanks for watching along, guys. Much appreciated everyone that is dropping a comment below. I will reply to all your comments, so please like, subscribe, and comment. As I've been saying, I'm completely sold out of my shirts. Everyone bought them so quickly. I am working on another run of those for everyone that's asking, so I will post up my merch website when I've got more stock in. So thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode of this Shovelhead build.